It must have been horrifying to be the GameCube. Like a trembling 18-year-old in a U-boat, eyes closed, praying quietly while the PlayStation 2 brought fire and brimstone down on the impending beachfront. Gaming had become a wildly competitive market in 2001, and an unforgiving market at that. The Dreamcast, released in 1999, didn't even get a chance to sing before being booed off stage, and here was Nintendo lining up to release a bizarre, simple little device whose aesthetic design was more toy than anything else. Its controller was some freakish dermoid cyst, its discs were hilariously tiny, and the thing had a damn handle on the back of it. What appeared in stores was a lunchbox-looking, wide-eyed dreamer of a machine that was forced to exist in the company of wolves. And of all times to send a canary into the caves, this was not it. But with reckless abandon, Nintendo continued onward and put out Luigi's Mansion, which marked the first time a Nintendo home console had been released without a game starring their distinctive plumber in red. The world was rooting for a masterpiece, or at least I was, and with bated breath I received what was quite possibly the biggest disappointment in my personal gaming career. At the time of writing this, I completed Luigi's Mansion for the first time in my life about 25 minutes ago. Even though I received a GameCube with a copy of this and Super Monkey Ball back in 2001, I remember only turning this game on to show my friends just how phenomenal it looked, only to switch it out with Super Monkey Ball when no one was watching. I understand now. I mean, admittedly, I was only 11 years old in 2001, but this game is a frustrating, beautiful bundle of missed opportunities. The game's graphics have aged flawlessly, they really have. The art direction is bubbly and colorful. Luigi himself is wonderful, his mannerisms are so perfectly uneasy. His breath floats in the air, he pants and whimpers when he stops walking, and he anxiously hums the game's theme song during quiet times. The detail in the world he explores never falters in quality either. Everything is intricately detailed. This care for the world is the driving force behind the game. It carried the entire game on its shoulders for me, keeping me excited to see the next room on offer. This isn't even the tail wagging the dog here, because the art direction and level design was so obviously intended to be the main draw of the game. The actual gameplay is about as far from a traditional Mario game as imaginable. You can't jump, walking and turning is tanky, and your perspective is mostly tied to that of a curious onlooker. Playing the game is magical because of this, almost like prodding around in a spectacular dollhouse. In the initial plans for the game, when Mario was still the main character, one of the ideas actually included a living dollhouse to play around in. This design philosophy clearly stuck. The progression mechanic behind slowly illuminating the house room by room is only successful because of the care behind building this mansion. The rewards for exploring and messing around in the mansion are often just money, which drive up your final score in the game and are assumingly only added for replayability. This falls apart though, even more so as I and the game have gotten older, because despite the added incentives to vacuum everything in sight, the biggest rewards for me were just visual. It's great seeing the world respond to your presence, and it's often overlooked in favor of static realism. The fact that 90% of everything in the mansion has physicality to it truly brings the game to life, and as I said earlier, is almost certainly the driving incentive for my completion of it. Just once I had finished the game, I was happy to be done with it, and even though I only received a C ranking, I was totally fine with never playing the game again. I had my time with this little dollhouse, and the money you could receive had become secondary to just playful exploration. The game's immersion comes in the form of feeling like a puppeteer instead of being in the shoes of Luigi, like you were an outside force behind a pane of glass. It's something that not many games have achieved, and also a great movement towards immersion in the often playful Nintendo game. You never really feel like Mario or Donkey Kong or Link, and the games are not necessarily designed to evoke that feeling, which leads them into feeling more like toys than pieces of art or higher entertainment. These games aren't at fault for this, of course. They place fun in front of basically everything else. But this design decision is the most fascinating part of Luigi's Mansion, and a hilarious response to the general consumer's desire for better graphics, because here they provide it, but not in the way you'd expect. The game works actively against realism, but because of it, it still looks good today. Sadly, nothing else really follows along. The game plays out like a parody, an inconsequential pastiche of something much better. Luigi himself is remarkably unheroic, and a great choice for a silly horror story like this. His constant apprehension makes dragging him through the mansion even funnier, like a prolonged Looney Tunes torture session. But the gameplay is criminally repetitive and legitimately upsetting now that I'm adult and playing the game. Where Mario games introduce playgrounds with multiple challenges and ton of room for self-imposed difficulty, Luigi's Mansion offers what amounts to a playful little roller coaster. Controlling Luigi never really becomes natural, and the perspective makes for really difficult spatial reasoning. I constantly found myself struggling with perceiving the proper direction of an enemy, and it's even harder with some of the smaller objects like hearts and coins, which bounce and splay about far quicker than Luigi can ever manage. The amount of missed opportunities is astounding, with amazing puzzles and mechanics basically served on a platter in front of you, and only to turn into the same thing over and over again. A lot of the rooms have a main ghost to be pursued within them before you can turn the lights on, and to summon them you have to figure out what exposes them to Luigi. And this could have been delightful, but for the sake of simplicity and aesthetic consistency, they all have the same basic few solutions. It all feels very misguided. The game is designed like an adventure game, but has the mechanical simplicity of a platformer. There are no progression systems like the ones that adventure games often heavily sequence themselves by, like the introduction of new items or game-changing elements. You do collect 3 elemental upgrades to your vacuum, which could have been game-changing moments, but they're flat and underutilized. A platformer's progression is often found in the levels you work through becoming more complicated and reactive, while adventure games often internalize this growth with RPG elements or better weapons and equipment. So Luigi's Mansion is left, forever sitting awkwardly in the middle, never really committing to any one role. Thank you so much for watching.